Welcome to the Leah Matheson Show. I'm your host, Aaliyah Matheson, and you might be wondering why we are in a completely different setting today. It is because we decided to leave California. We decided to leave Texas temporarily while it was crazy snow, looking like Narnia, and we got our photo op in, but we aren't about that cold life. So we're chasing the sun. We came to Cali to visit family, and we are in the Bloom podcast studio right now.
Right.
That's Donovan, my brother. He has his own podcast. You guys should check it out. Bloom the podcast. We are in this studio right now. We're going to be talking about homeschooling while I'm at home with Mama McReynolds.
Hello.
And my brother Donovan. And we're just going to talk about homeschooling and our experiences with homeschooling and why you should homeschool. And yeah, so let's just jump right in. Y'all ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So question number 1 for Mama McReynolds.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to homeschool?
Okay, so we really wanted you guys to have Christian education for it to be Christ-centered. And originally we thought we'd send you to Christian school. That was like the only thing I knew about because we were new believers and first-generation Christians. So, but once we saw the cost of Christian school, we were like, maybe we should think of something else.
Send him to a nice private Christian school.
So the Lord just worked it out where I ended up hearing a radio show about homeschooling. I had never heard of it before. So I was like, this sounds interesting. And so I started looking more into it, talking to friends, went to the CHIA convention.
The CHIA convention.
Yes.
I don't think anyone knows what that is, so you're going to have to
It's a homeschooling convention where they talk to you about how to do it, what it's about, the laws, everything.
It's co-op parent training.
So yeah, I went to that and I was really excited about it. And, we started in preschool, so it wasn't like official yet. So Dad and I thought, well, let's try it out and see how it goes. And the more we did it, the more we loved it and got more convicted that this was the way that the Lord would have us do it. It's the best way to teach you guys the Bible and train you guys character-wise and just, do it the way that we envisioned it.
Did people think you were weird for homeschooling, or did you know homeschool kids at that time?
Like I said, we were newer to the faith, and you guys were really young, so we were only a couple years in, so we didn't know a lot of people. We had some friends at church that were going to start the Cespedes family, so we did it together. We did do like a little co-op preschool with a few families, so we kind of taught each other and helped each other, and it was really nice. You guys had your little preschool. I forgot about that. Little preschool with like maybe 6 families that we got together with once a week. And we all took turns teaching different things, and it was really fun.
Okay. And then you were public school.
Yes, I was.
Okay. And what was your experience like in public school? Did you learn a lot?
I think that I was very distracted, especially I did well in the early years, but once I got to high school, social life really distracted me. So I didn't do as well as I could have.
And then speaking of social life, the biggest thing that they say about homeschoolers is that we're not like antisocial. Like I get that all the time. Like, how do you socialize? Like, who do you talk to? Like, we're just living in like a hole in the ground and like never see people. And like, what do you like? You were homeschooled, obviously.
Yeah.
So I obviously have my own experiences, but what was your experiences socializing? Because I'm very, very extroverted, like to the max.
Right.
So I have no problem socializing. But did you ever feel stifled in your social life?
No. And because we're completely opposite personalities, like I would say I'm more of an introverted person. But I think for homeschool people in general, I think you get a bigger social connection as a whole, comparatively speaking, to public school kids. Because in public school, you are brought up with your peers and your peers only. So the only people you really know how to communicate with are people your exact age. So I think with homeschool, the dynamic of homeschooling is family oriented. So even though I may not have had a ton of friends my own age, I had friends that were your age, friends that were AJ's age, Ashley's age. And because you're hanging out with families, not only are you interacting with your friends' parents, you're interacting with their siblings, their younger siblings, older siblings.
Yeah.
So just by association, you're getting a lot bigger peripheral of social interactions as a whole. So I think that benefits you a lot.
I feel like homeschool kids are way more mature. Like, obviously, this is a general statement. I can't say it's for every kid. But in general, from the kids I know who were homeschooled, they are very well-spoken when it comes to talking to adults. Yeah. And they're not like, I don't know. I feel like if you only hang out with people your age, you're just going to be kind of narrow-minded and not very... Because you're just awkward.
You don't get to experience a lot of different views and mindsets, because mainly the people you're going to be talking to are going to be people that enjoy the exact same things as you, because they're in the exact same stage of life. So me not having a ton of friends growing up, I hung out with AJ a lot, who's our older brother, and just with hanging out with him, I got to see a lot of different just people in general that were in different stages in life, that had different interests, different experiences, more knowledge. So I was kind of just getting to take that all in as a young kid. So then when I do hang out with people that are older than me or younger than me, I can kind of adapt, because you're able to just see a lot more growing up.
I would like to say, too, that your relationships as siblings was a lot closer. A lot of times when you go to school, you kind of have your friends at school, and it's kind of like, oh, that's my younger brother. Oh, I don't hang out with him. Your relationships were sweet, and you enjoyed each other. I mean, not all the time, but you guys have grown up as best friends. So your relationship has been close, which I've really loved, you know.
Plus, when you're in the church, I feel like a lot of church people homeschool their kids. So you have a lot of homeschool kids to play with and hang out with, and a lot of the time you're done a lot sooner than other kids who go to school, so then you just go to their houses and hang out all day, and you know you get a lot more social time because you're out doing stuff instead of
you
in a
finished
classroom.
school a lot earlier too.
I was done by like 11 a.m.
It was always my rule, we're done by lunch. Until high school, when you guys were doing stuff on your own, then you finished whenever. But for the young years, it was always my goal to be done by lunchtime. Start early, get done, and then we could do whatever we needed the rest of the day. So
I would say that's one of the benefits of homeschooling. Can you guys think of some other benefits? Like, off the top of my head, I think one of the biggest benefits for me specifically, being somebody who's very unconventional and not like academic book smart type, I liked the fact that you could tailor the school to my specific needs. I was more creative as a kid. I was into writing and art and all that stuff. So I did not give a care about math. So because you know that about me, you don't have to, you can tailor the education around what I'm good at and what I want to do, as opposed to a one size fits all curriculum. And if you don't pass or do this, then you're not going to graduate.
Yeah. I mean, it took me a while to figure out the different learning styles, because remember, I kept trying to do certain things with you and it was not working. So
trying to get me to read books.
And then I couldn't figure out what
Laura
kind
Ingalls
you liked.
Guys.
Once we got into fantasy and wizards and all that, you love that. Harry Potter. But I didn't know that you were going to be a writer. I wish I had known that. But by the time you were in second grade, you were writing your own spelling books for Ashley. And then I started to think, okay, this is what she likes to do. And I realized that you learned better that way. So it's like, as a parent, you can, like you said, tailor it to the individual child and help them learn in a better way than if they were just put in the box of this is the only way you can do it.
And being done early, you have so much time to pursue and figure out what you like doing, because I was so bored half the time. I was like, I guess I'm just going to write. And then I wrote 3 books before I was even 21. So I think that it gave me a lot of opportunities to kind of discover what I wanted to do, and not actually just sitting around doing homework all day long. I could actually go out and do things, and I was bored enough to be creative.
Sorry, go ahead. No. Go.
Somebody
go. I'll go. Fine. I was a Canadian standoff. So one of the things that I think is a huge benefit, and I think this goes for, I think a lot of homeschoolers could back this up, is it teaches you how to be disciplined. Because I strongly believe that homeschooling is what you make it, because I know some people that are homeschooled that I talked to them when we were doing school, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm still doing school. And it was like 8 p.m. And it was like, what do you mean you're still doing school? And like, oh, like I did this subject and then I took a break. And then I did this subject and I took a break. And while that may work for some people, I think it's super cool because you can really teach yourself how to just zero in and knock out all your stuff. Like I would get up at like 5 a.m. at the crack of dawn.
Yeah, sometimes we had to put a limit on that.
Yeah, so they had to stop me from being productive.
Yeah, because it was a little too early for me. When you were on your own fully, then that's fine.
But it kind of gives you that kind of motivation and mindset where you can get up every day, get to work, knock it all out straight back to back to back. And then, we
do school ahead of time for the next
I
day.
was going to say, you guys did it at night a lot of
double
times.
up on our schoolwork.
Amen to that.
For a couple days ahead because we just wanted time off.
Yeah, so it kind of allows you to kind of figure out how your work ethic can grow and where you can improve and kind of just building that work ethic in general. Because I know for me, I use every day, it's building that as a kid. And now I use that, whether that's getting up just to go to the gym or getting up for work. You kind of just build that work ethic and creating self-drive. I think with school, a lot of times it's like, well, if I don't get up at this time, the professor's going to yell at me. So you kind of have that external motivation pushing you. With homeschool, it's a lot more internal, whereas you may have your parents that are there and obviously making sure you do your school. And you guys were very on top of us and making sure we're doing our school daily. But it's more of how effective do I want this to be today? So you can either get up and do it like we did, or you can have the parents on our backs and forcing us to do it. So I think you guys were good at letting us kind of figure out how we wanted to do the school. And, where me, I like to get up early. You may have liked to sleep in. And, it's kind of that just difference, like you were saying, tailoring it to each person. But I think discipline is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So something that I talk a lot about or have in other episodes is who is raising our kids. Because we look at the public school system, we see the government and all these like liberal ideologies being shoved onto our children at a really young age. Yeah. So it's like it brings the question up, who is raising our children? Are we even raising our own children?
Well, that was one of the main things. It's like the more I homeschooled, the more I just really valued the time with you guys when you were little, because most of the character training is the young years. And so if you're off at school for 5, 6, 7 hours, they're having more influence than I am as your parent. And when you're younger, you want to really deal with, just behavioral things and discipline things and, how to get along, sharing, any of that stuff. It's like I wanted to be the one. We wanted to instill biblical values in you guys. And also we didn't want to have to undo unbiblical thinking if you had gone to school like a public school. So,
and it's not even just the teachers teaching liberal ideology in a lot of schools. It's the peers too that are pushing whatever they're learning.
Because they don't know any better.
Yeah. And then you're stuck with a bunch of kids your age and they all think certain things are normal that probably aren't normal, or they shouldn't know, or they are influenced by outside sources, or they have bad home life and they bring that to their school, and
Yeah.
I mean, we had always said when you got older, we were open to the idea of you going to high school maybe if you had wanted to, but the more we did it and the more you guys wanted to be home. And you did have a time when you thought you wanted to go to school.
Yeah, there was like a period where I was like super interested in going to school, probably because I was just like, it's going to be like High School Musical.
Yeah.
But then my dad was like, if you go, then you have to stay for a year. And I was like,
well, what I
that's
think
a little too much of commitment.
I think some of that desire came from the stigma around homeschooling. Because I think when people, especially if you have friends that aren't public school or aren't homeschooled, and they find out you're homeschooled, then you're kind of looked at as that sheltered, weird homeschool kid who doesn't know how to socialize and doesn't have that many friends. And no one wants to be that kid. Like, even if you're not a weird person and you're homeschooled, people project that onto you, even if that's not you, because that's just how people are.
That's like the number one compliment. Like, you're homeschooled? I didn't even know.
Yeah.
You're so normal.
Yeah, and even like it still happens to this day. I'll be at work, right? And then I'll be talking to someone and it'll randomly come up that I was homeschooled, and they'll be like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And you're kind of like, what does that mean?
It's funny because the older people these days, like especially being a conservative, like older conservatives, they're like, that's why you're like smart.
Right.
Because you weren't brainwashed by the public school system.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of, the tables have turned.
Yeah. So I think that projection can have a huge play on why kids might not want to be homeschooled, or maybe why they think public schooling is going to be better for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, nowadays especially, I couldn't imagine sending you to a public school setting where you're going to be learning things that are just crazy, as far as like even gender, or teaching
Men
you
can
that
menstruate.
you can be a boy, or just I can't even fathom the idea.
Yeah.
So
it's wild too, because if you and so I could never do it because, like you said, even just using the gender thing as like a staple piece there, these people are so willing to forego basic principle things that are true and have been true since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
That boys are boys and girls are girls, and that's what it is. If they're willing to forego those basic truths, how can you really call that a school? That's not learning. That's not education. Yeah. That's just projection of worldly ideology.
Yeah, I mean, I always worried about, like, I'm not great at science or this or that, but I just realized even in school, there's things, you're not going to be good at every subject, and I just had to trust the Lord that I wanted him to be the priority. Gender. Yeah, I wanted to teach you guys that, and as I saw with you and your different areas that you're good at, you sought out teaching you how to learn, so you can go research on your own for things that you were interested in, and certain things, maybe weren't taught as well as I wished, but turned
out okay.
Just have to trust the Lord. And I figured you'd either go to college or do something to fill in those gaps later if you wanted to, and you do the best you can. It's not like a perfect thing where you're just, I didn't feel like I did a great job in certain things, but I guess as the one homeschooling, you kind of always doubt yourself at times. But I was really thankful for how it all turned out.
I mean, heck, you're not a teacher. You didn't go to college to be a teacher. No. So you're kind of just winging it, which is honestly impressive. So shout out to all the homeschool parents out there.
Some people are, but I wasn't. But I learned a lot too along the way, as far as remembering certain things that I had forgotten, or when I teach you, like, oh, this is great. Because
that was actually my next question is, can anyone homeschool?
Anyone can. Now, there's certain people who want their kids to be in an accredited high school if they're trying to get into a certain college. So you have to think through that in the older years. But for the younger years, there's really nothing to worry about as far as even like you don't even have to be enrolled in school till you're in first grade. So if someone wants to try it out for preschool, kindergarten, get their feet wet, see if it's something that they want to do, anyone can do it because you don't, legally have to be enrolled anywhere.
But do you a lot of parents feel like they need to have like credentials, or they feel like they don't know enough to homeschool, or like especially a lot of people right now, they've been forced into homeschooling from COVID,
right?
So it's like, what do you have to say to those parents who feel like
I would say for
they're just thrown into the deep end?
Well, I would say for some of them it's probably a miserable experience because they're doing it over Zoom. If you're doing the actual teaching, you can do it the way you would like. I would recommend, if you're interested, to like try and do different things so your kids aren't bored or just sitting there in front of a computer all day. But there's so many ways you could get help too. There are online classes, there's co-ops, there's video teachers, and there's lots of fun workbooks that you can teach your kids, especially in the early years. I mean, I'm not saying that some people, I just can't imagine not being able to teach your kid the basic things, how to count, colors, even the reading, the phonics books are pretty simple. Don't underestimate your ability that you could do that.
I think people think too that it looks like a schoolroom. Like they think it looks like a public school where you're a teacher standing in front of a chalkboard like this and that. Where 90% of our homeschool life was just
on the couch.
Us looking at our own books independently, and if we needed help, then we'd go to you.
Well, no, when you were little, we did it all
when
together.
we were little.
We
but
had lots of charts
as older
and
kids,
songs and things, and we did lots of things together too. And the thing is, the younger kids learn from the older. So you used to sit and watch me do the numbers with AJ. And I remember the day you started reciting the math facts. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, oh, she's picking this up. And I wasn't even thinking about it, because I just had you sitting with me while I was doing it with AJ. And same with you and Ashley. You'd pick up things from listening to the older sibling stuff.
Yeah.
So, you're picking up things all the way around. And we did things together, Bible time, history, science. I think we did a lot of that as a group, so we kind of just brought it together until you got older and you could do it on your own.
You know what too, kind of going back to what you were saying about the people that are forced to do homeschooling because of COVID, that kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about that discipline. All the people that I know that are in college that were homeschooled have not decreased their productivity when they got transferred to all
Zoom.
The online Zoom stuff, because they're used to being able to self-start themselves to do their work. All the people that I know that were public schooled have definitely felt that kickback with going to Zoom. So I think that's just one of the other benefits with homeschooling. Like I said, you get to figure out how you motivate yourself to do work, so that way no matter what the circumstance is, whether it's a Zoom class or doing your regular schoolwork, you're already ready to figure out what's the easiest way going to be for you to learn in that scenario and how you're going to get yourself to do that work. So I think that's just another benefit.
Yeah.
So, like, how would you how would a new parent who's never homeschooled in their life start out? Like, what would you recommend the first thing they do? Do they go,
Well, it depends what age their children are. It really depends. If your kids are just babies and you're just doing preschool, you really don't have to register with anyone. You just, common sense stuff. Okay, let's start getting our flashcards for alphabet, do our colors, numbers, get all that going. But as they get older, you kind of want to think, do I want to be part of a charter school? Do I want to be part of a ISP or a PSP now they call it, which is kind of like an umbrella school program where you could enroll and they keep your records for you? Or do you want to do it on your own and file your own affidavit? I would recommend probably going to a CHIA convention so you could learn the laws for your individual state. They probably have stuff online now where you could see that, and learning, just kind of getting the how-to. They even have like a how to homeschool type notebook that they give you. And so it really depends what age your children are and what the laws are for your state. You kind of have to look those things up. But for all the little ones, it's really simple to just start. I mean, I've heard so many moms say, oh, I'm not patient enough, or, oh, I could never do that. And it's like, I'm not patient either. This is what grows your patience. And it really did. It's really a lot of things that the Lord taught me during that time, humility and not knowing what I was doing half the time and having to seek help and seek him and really be in prayer and just having to rely on him because, you doubt
Worst case,
yourself.
there's always tutors and the answer key.
Yeah, the answer keys are key to make sure you're doing things well. And if I didn't know something well, I tried to find a friend. I remember I did have a friend, Mrs. Camp, who did some tutoring for AJ for grammar and different things. There's resources. You have friends who are good at things and that you can reach out to and
With
say,
Facebook,
hey.
it's even easier now. You just join a homeschool group online and you can have people help you out on there.
And just the realization that there will be gaps in some areas. And even if you go to public school, I went to school and I don't remember half the stuff that I learned in certain areas, and no one's going to pick up everything. Everyone's gifted and talented in different areas. So, it just depends on the child and how much they apply themselves. The first thing is getting them to be able to sit and have self-control and listen to you. That's really the main part you're working on in preschool.
And then something I wanted to ask both of you is your biggest challenge with homeschooling, teaching, and then yours biggest challenge being a student. And then I'll give my experience too.
Yeah.
I would say, like Donovan was saying, being disciplined, making sure that I was on top of things, organized, and just not getting overwhelmed, having to trust in the Lord because, homeschooling 4 different ages, 4 different grades, dealing with discipline issues and the normal challenges of the day. There were times when I would call Dad and say, oh my goodness, I can't do this. And he'd say, no, you can with the Lord's help. And just really having to rely on the Lord. It's challenging because you do doubt yourself sometimes. Like, how can I do this? I'm not good enough at this. So it's really about, I had to really trust and work on patience, which I'm still working on and wasn't perfect at, but we did the best we could, right? So, I don't know. For me, that was the challenge, is just trying to be patient, teaching you guys, and trying to be really diligent to make sure I did the best that I could.
What about you? Any challenges?
I would say first of all, figuring out how I wanted to do it, because I wasn't always disciplined when I started. Like, it took me a while to figure out okay, I can actually get this narrowed down and be done by 11 a.m. If I really apply myself right now. And then I think the other thing that kind of going with that was, and still to this day, I tend to rush a lot. So with homeschool, it's not as cross your T's and dot your I's, because there's not, you're the only professor there is. You're the professor, the principal, all that. So
Dad was the principal.
Yeah, so it was kind of just there would be times where I would just be so focused on trying to get everything done so quickly, and then I would either be missing stuff or I don't know, just not giving 100% just because I was trying to make sure I could get to the next subject to be done by a certain time. So really just kind of telling myself to slow down and actually focus on each subject, I think was something that took me a little bit of time to actually grasp, because I was more focused on the efficiency, not necessarily just the quality. So kind of finding the balance between quality and efficiency was always and still is, honestly, to this day, a struggle for me at times.
Yeah, I'd like to add to flexibility, because AJ was much more of a textbook. You just give him the textbook, he'd read it and do it, and you were much more abstract. So I had to really be okay, she doesn't learn the same way, and be flexible and say, okay, toss that book aside and get this book for you, and you might have a different one, and all of you had different styles. So it was really having to be flexible and realize we're not supposed to fit in the box. That's why we homeschool. I don't have to do it a certain way. And to trust that we could do it this way and it still can be productive. So I think for parents who are homeschooling, you have to be flexible. You can't, it's not bringing school home. That's not the point of homeschooling. Like you were saying, we're not sitting in a classroom and, you're doing it whichever way works, for your family. Everyone's might look a little different. So.
Right. No, yeah. I think one of my challenges was trying to, like, before you figured out my style of learning, like I would literally sit there and look at a history book and I'd be reading it and it'd just be going in one ear and out the other. And I couldn't tell you a single thing that I learned. I just feel like,
yes, I
like I'm
remember.
reading words, but I don't know what.
I remember saying, so what did you learn? I don't know.
I just did not, if I didn't care about a topic, I just did not apply myself at all.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of that way. Like if I have no interest in it, nothing. But the minute, like when I started writing books and stuff, I did a historical fiction novel for my first novel, and all of a sudden I was into history.
Yeah.
It's like amazing how that works when you actually want to do something.
Yeah.
But a question: are all homeschool kids actually weird?
I wouldn't know.
Is it a true stereotype? Are the stereotypes true from Mean Girls?
You asking me or her?
I don't know.
I would say that we've definitely met our share of families that were more sheltered, but because we had, so many different types of family and friends that, live different lifestyles, I think you guys were exposed to things, and we tried to not shelter you so much that you were going to be shocked when you went into the world. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
I would say there's some truth to it. I'd say there's some weird homeschool kids out there, that dress a little weird, they don't have the trends to look at because they don't have any trendy cool friends at their school. They just have their siblings.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's true for all homeschool kids.
I think
We all had our phases though.
Yeah, you can't make that blanket statement because I know
Yeah.
tons of public school kids that are weird.
yeah, that's so true.
That's also true.
You can't really just put that on, but I think more or less it's about knowing who you are as a person, because there are people that I've met that are homeschooled and that are on the more quote unquote sheltered side, but they understand who they are and they understand that they are on that more sheltered side.
Yeah.
So they don't come off as weird. What comes off as weird is when you have a sheltered kid who doesn't know that they're sheltered. So they don't understand that they don't understand things, basically. You know what I mean?
They're ignorant of their ignorance.
Exactly. So it's really about understanding yourself and really being self-aware. I think the parents have a big part to play in that. So anytime I see a more odd kid, I usually would ask myself, what does the parenting look like in that scenario? Because I think in our case, both you and Dad were very good at explaining, talking to us, like you said, exposing us to certain things, that way we can understand. And I think, as parents, that's a big responsibility in homeschooling. And I would say that's the bigger responsibility, even more so than the academic side.
Yeah.
More or less, it's about really giving them a good worldview and exposing them to things in a way that they can understand it and grasp it and really learn and grow as a person. Because I think that's the ultimate goal of homeschooling, is obviously the education, but to grow them as a person. And I think that's how you do that. And so I'd say it's a mix of both.
Yeah.
What are some other misconceptions about homeschooling as we kind of wrap up this episode? Anything you'd like to clear up?
Well, once again, I think a lot of women think they have to be credentialed or some, highly educated or equipped in some way. It's like, you're their parent. You love them more than anyone else, especially in the young years. Even if you didn't want to do high school, you are fully equipped to teach the basic schooling things, and it's so much more than just school. It's training in the Lord if you're a Christian, discipline,
and if you're not equipped
character.
to teach your own children how to learn, then why do you think the same people who taught you and you're unequipped are going to teach your kids to be equipped?
Yeah.
I
I mean, I get
blind
some,
leading the blind.
there's different levels of education, and I had enough to where I felt confident enough to teach up to a certain level, but it's trust the Lord to fill in the gaps and to provide resources if that's something you're interested in. I'm not saying that homeschool is the only way, or that, the children are just going to be better if they're homeschooled. There's no promises of that, but there's definitely something to be said for the relationship, the ability to train your children in the Lord, that you're not going to have the same ability if they're gone so many hours a day and you only have a few hours at night. And, it's just a totally different lifestyle. So I would just encourage people to not doubt themselves so much, to not feel like, oh, I have to be so above bar to be able to do this. It's just not true.
Or even like a lot of parents think, oh, because they work part-time or something, they can't homeschool. It's like you can fit the homeschooling into your life.
Especially because in the young years, it's only a few hours. And in the older years, you're self-sufficient. All you're doing is grading, coming alongside, helping them understand certain things. But a lot of stuff is done on your own.
Yeah.
So
I hope that gave you guys a little bit of confidence if you're looking into homeschooling to pursue that, because clearly they turn out pretty cool. I don't know. Might be a little biased, but I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We will be here next week on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will see you then.